a uniform characteristic of each of those people, and I have a slight characteristic like that. So I'm attracted to that same thing.
And also you had work to do to continue on this level that knowledge was important, right?
Well, that's true also. And again, was my life enhanced by the near-death experience itself, by getting a perception and sharing some informational exchange on that level? The answer is, of course, yes. And that really has little or nothing to do with reincarnation per se. It has more to do with, like you suggested, that it would be from the Akashic record type stuff, the big library in the sky, the aspect of total knowledge, and that can be attained toward on a level from the human condition, fervently pondering or meditating or whatever, and reaching up to that. That is not becoming that. And there's a big difference, a very big difference. Because in my experience, I experienced both of those aspects. In other words, I was in tune with, or at one with, and available to me was total knowledge in a question and answer period, and as actually as close as I can say, part of my life review was before a certain decision was made regarding that which was more in my near-death experience. The last stage or so, that's the most intensive state or the most subtle state of my near-death experience was becoming total knowledge. And that did not make it unique, but it made it quite rare. So I'm not a good example when it comes to talking about, you shouldn't use me as an example for things, especially when it comes to the subject of reincarnation or that type of stuff.
But I'm still going to ask you, what about the Vivaldi stuff? Since I've got you on film. Just for the listeners who were watchers who haven't seen this before your near-death experience, you couldn't even stand classical music, and when you came back, you not only recognized Vivaldi's music, but you seemed to have an understanding of his thought processes when he was writing certain things.
I got as close as I got talking to Elaine just a short while ago, a couple of weeks ago. And I said something about second soprano, and something was mentioned about Vivaldi. And I said, well, I sang that once as a second soprano. That's as close as I got to admitting anything close to, seriously, close to the characteristic of having a degree or a form of reincarnation of, I'm Tom Sawyer here, and to having that kind of connectedness with a past life recall, even if it be only a characteristic having to do with the female gender. Now I'm talking in reality, or the physical reality, the physicality of the female gender. So it was that, but in that capacity, there's differences and so on, spiritually speaking, in that, I don't know if I can correlate this to the second soprano part, but it had to do with a young lady who, right, and I wondered why I was always attracted to that name. It's kind of curious. So see, now I'm falling prey to the same set of circumstances as why have I always liked that name? As I kind of like looked around, well, I don't know anybody by that name, and maybe it's just that Felicia or Felicity, that it's a test of something in my near-death experience was a test of my felicity, as I wrote it down later on, and I don't use terminology like that, so there was a clue there and so on. And that is, in all actuality, I was going to say probability, in all actuality was that there was a characteristic there that I was that, or therefore that which was is now a part of me. That's a more correct way of saying it, because I am not she. A characteristic of she is part of me. No problem. Because, see, again, the ego involves, say, well, I was King George. Oh, well, la-di-da, then where's all your jewels? Let's go buy a new car.
Yeah.
Instead of worrying about paying the bills, you didn't do a very good job. If you were that grandioso person, and now you're just a schlemiel.
So going back to reincarnation now, if you meet somebody in your life or have a burning desire to play the piano and you've never taken lessons, or from my point of view, I always felt like somewhere in here there's a wonderful singing voice, but it never seems to come out. The kids will tell you for sure. Then it could be keying into a personality fragment that might have been yours in a previous life.
Yeah, and yet the way you presented that, I would say a probability toward that. And again, a minor little caution is go for the characteristic and never mind the character. And again, then the character equals the personality. Because to claim that you were the personality of a previous individual, well, that's getting kind of rude. That's kind of egotistical, first of all. And I mean, because, you're taking on an awful lot of responsibility. Because if you knew what your entire personality before, well, you would damn well better be really good at what you do this time. No, it's a prerequisite that if you have that much recognition of a personality of yours, not just a characteristic. I mean, it's a grand thing for any one of us to deal with a characteristic of ours now and then and get over it. I mean, I'm going through that transitional state this last couple months regarding certain things that I've shared with you, and personally and privately. But to claim that of even a single other personality, well, you've got to be good, because it would be a tragedy and a waste to not have vast, voluminous amounts of information regarding who you are and the actual cause and effect relationship regarding that. So some of these people, they have a tendency to brag at parties of their 5 incarnations. They would really be a little embarrassed to hear the long version of this conversation. And if that is true, then therefore they must know this, this, and this, and this. And they should be really well adept at it, because I think they would end up embarrassing themselves. And that would actually help their personality. Yeah. I don't know. We didn't get into this very deeply, but I think it's a start.
We just scratched the surface.
And even if we, again, use this tape as an introduction, and of course, as I promised before, and I didn't come up with the actual outline, because I think really what I'm going to have to do is not only make an outline, but have a poster. And during the taping, point and show on the poster, and there's a blackboard or a poster, because of the flip-flopping back and forth that we obviously have to do. So in other words, I'll say, well, wait a minute now, that's a characteristic, not a personality. And so to have a visual aid to be able to say, see that up at this level or down at this level. And even though I never, I always hate that up and down ladder type measurements, I can't think of any other way to accurately maintain a person's attention on how to build off it. Because, again, we haven't touched on so many things. You have to talk about characteristics such as external power, the accumulation of power. And then if you've done that for a half of a lifetime or a full lifetime, what does that in itself mean? And what does that is actually a prerequisite of something regarding reincarnation. And that all of that which is accumulated, if it be materialistic or power, by the power I mean that ego or humanistic type power, the power of money, the power of manipulation on a psychological level, that has to be dealt with. And that will be dealt with before you can ever take on another personality in a future life, or when you zip through that tunnel and end up back at your creator, as with God or as part of God.
Since we still have a little more time and we're sort of superficially covering the subject. What about group reincarnation? Say, like, it's been said that a lot of people who were in Atlantis all chose to come back at this time to help the Earth through its transition state, or say your family of you and Elaine and Tom and Todd and Tim and the grandparents. When you come in as a whole family, there's so many different questions.
Mm-hmm.
If you're passing over one at a time, do you all wait on the other side together to reincarnate back in and make your decision of, well, who's the father this time? You know, have you any idea of how all of that kind of works?
Yeah, I do. And as opposed to like giving the 3 or 4 sentence definition of that, I have to start by saying the problem with that is that you're so casually skipping over the part about the soul level. In other words, the levels at which the soul is maintained is a singular soul, which can gain a personality this next time. And then what is the holding pattern? And what does that all mean? Well, right away, they are not up there waiting. Because what do you mean, waiting for what? Waiting for time?
I mean, are there like group souls?
Well, I'm agreeing that yes, there is. That yes, there is. That's reasonably rare. It's usually misconstrued. Because how do you differentiate between a family of any sort and a personality? See, you're saying like a group of souls. Were they personalities at any given time? And you're saying that yes, they were, Lemuria or Atlantis. And that if they are coming back now, what is the intention? And is it, well, the intention is to salvage your love or promulgate unconditional love or for the service of this or that or that. Okay, well, what was it in their personalities or individually their personality that disallowed them to gain other personalities for the purposes of this escalative type thing to gain and deal with and solve their personality problems and accolades and what have you, to become totally homogenous with the light again.
So that they wouldn't have to come back.
And I'm not condemning them, saying that there must have been something bad or sad
Or unlearned
or unfinished business that they have had to wait around, as we perceive it, to this time, or for the purposes of, in total knowledge, they saw that there would be the onset of the new age, and that without their help, this one little characteristic might have been neglected or unfinished. And that's not that great of a thing. I know that's not as glorious as having no personalities in the plural. In other words, a group soul incarnation. We can't get off onto a tangent and do justice to that. There is subtle forms of manipulation on various levels. See, we haven't even gotten into levels because I just skipped from a spiritual impermeation of a soul body being attached to the earth, the big blue marble. I haven't gotten into other galaxies and so on, that there can be personalities or your soul can be simultaneously, here we go, functioning in an entirely other galaxy. But I don't know of any circumstance where your personality right now, which is the largest point of your perceptible soul, and that your practically inconceivable soul self is functioning as another personality in another galaxy. I would say no to that. I can't disprove that. But I don't know of any circumstance where that is true. However, your soul being of its nature can be functioning well, it's too simple to say in other ways, but I guess I'm stuck with that. In other ways, in an entirely other galaxy. Because again, we have a linear perception of we're here on this Earth, the big blue marble, in this solar system, and in this galaxy.
And something I read from Dick Sutton a few years ago, he had a theory that, when they talk about twin souls or soulmates, or not in the romantic sense, but like there was some evidence of someone living in Europe and someone living in America simultaneously meeting and their artwork being exactly the same. It's almost like those triplet boys that were found that were separated at birth, and they all smoked the same cigarettes and used the same toothpaste and all of that. That you can be interconnected with another living soul that you may never meet. That's another aspect?
Well,
like a soul fragmentation? Or?
I don't have a problem with that. No, I understand what you're talking about, and I'll agree to its feasibility. I'm incorporating that into what I know. So the answer is yes. Now, if you'd have to go with what you know, with greater details, and then I would have to judge each and any of these circumstances as to its validity or not. If it was, we want to call it a group soul, if we want to call it just a sharing of identical characteristics.
Personality.
Right. And that from a singular personality of prior into an equal division of the personality so that they are identical this time because they're each 33 1/3% of the original personality. And that the three personalities that you're dealing with this time and measuring exactly is probably not the exact personality of the prior. It'll only be a third of the characteristic.
Like an overflow.
A mixture of,
yeah. Okay. Here's another good one that a lot of couples would love to have an answer for. Say you're a divorced couple, and one person feels that they've really worked things through and spiritually evolved through the problems of the relationship, and the other one hasn't. I have questions specifically asked of me, not me personally, but just an open question to the world. Will I be linked to this other soul person until he or she works through with me what I feel I've worked through?
I gotta qualify this, by no means to diminish the spiritual beauty of the biochemical connection that spouses usually have by copulation, by sex. That there is a biochemical mating that is usually spiritually enhanced, or vice versa. The biochemical mating will spiritually enhance the individual, as well as karmic fulfillment, as well as preordained or predestined mutuality. I'm making up a word. Knows that how did this come to be? However, now that I've qualified that as being all righteous and glorious and beautiful, and it can enhance one another, even if the marriage goes on the rocks quite right away, and that it was really kind of more of a tragedy judged by everybody else around and even the two participants, that's still okay and that's good. In other words, it's what it is. The point I want to make, I wanted to say enough of those sentences to state that when either one of them transforms, when they die or when they transform, they will have little or no connectedness at all. In other words, there will not be a remembrance, oh, hey, how do you do? And I mean, that's stepping on toes of the paradise stuff in a way, because
my mother didn't have 3 husbands over on the side waiting for
see,
her.
it's no, wait a minute. It's not denying that.
Yeah.
See, because on a level of paradise might very well be that. The perfect example is Elaine will get to see her grandmother. And that is not a falsehood, that is a spiritual reality. But then just go a little stage farther, at the point in time where a new incarnation, a new personality that the soul is to take on a new personality, there is usually no recollection whatsoever, and therefore no attractedness. Can frown on that one, could argue about that one, but usually, well, I said usually no attractiveness and no recollection to either the prior personality or that which the personality was attracted to or became or enhanced. Meaning that if you are married and it's a very loving, spiritual, romantic, sexual relationship in all the different ways, there is a tremendous connectedness there, and that will be broken. That will be,
So when you say
I don't want to say annihilated.
It means till death.
Yeah. At least in the more intensive transformative states. Because again, if you're earthbound as a ghost or as a person who is in a purgatory type scenario or a scenario where you have to be earthbound to burn off bad karma, I mean that typical phrase, and then you can read all you need to read on using, what do you mean by burning off bad karma? You've never heard of it? Well, you have to read about 18 books on karma, or books that have the word karma in it. That burning off bad karma, unfinished business, and so on, they will still be attached. They will be attached to their characteristics and their personality. They will still be their personality. Even though there are more in the soul body, they will be without the human form, the human bodily form, but they will have the human characteristics and all of the personality. They will not have let go of the personality yet.
That's what spirits you talk to or show
Sure.
up on the earth.
Might also add, let me throw in here right now, because we're kind of getting to the point where we're getting intelligent enough to publicly frown on this channeling bullshit. I mean, that is where a vast, vast majority of channeling, actual channeling, takes place.
So
To say nothing of this egotistical channeling of, I have a dear friend who I love fervently, therefore I must be channeling him because I thought of him last night.
Yeah.
Right? Or I had a dream last night, and I dreamed about Tom Sawyer and his blue sweater. Therefore, I'm channeling Tom Sawyer. I mean, that's silly enough in itself.
Yeah.
And God bless the love, attachment, and the desire for that. Okay, that's okay, and anybody should be proud of their lovely feelings and attachments for that. But then actual bona fide channeling, still that is within this realm of disenfranchised or disembodied spiritual souls.
That aren't getting on with the work that they're supposed to.
In other words, shall we dare say they are not progressing as well as I wish 98% of them could or should. I'm being judgmental about it, I have to. But yes, that's in that realm, and that is a low realm when we say high is better and low is worse.
So
I
if
mean,
you
that is still every bit attached to the earth plane, to the human condition, which is one of the grossest forms. I mean, it's the grossest form of the soul, of an individualistic human type soul. Elaine asked me a question last night about the soul of a rabbit, and I'm not sure how she asked it, but anyway, in my paragraph that I fed back to her was that, well, if you want to think in terms of a group soul, or I use that phrase, in other words, a soul regarding the animal or plant kingdom, you should think in terms of that. Yeah, you can perceive of a soul body representing rabbits. It's all the rabbits in the world collectively make up a type of a soul. Please don't construe that as the equivalent. Here we go with measurement. The equivalent of the human soul. There's no to that. No. The human being, that characteristic, that which is the human being, and as we have scientific proof, cruising around the big blue marble only, that is a unique soul. It's an embodiment. It is the embodiment of the soul. The human condition is the embodiment of a unique soul. That does not happen in animals. It does not happen in plants. Now, we know that there are gleams of light in everything, and that collectively the biomass, good phrase, biomass of the big blue marble, the human condition is part of that. See, it's an integral part of that. And it should never be denied that it exists separately from the biomass of the Big Blue Marble, meaning from the primordial soup in the shadow of Mount St. Helens, where there's just nothing but black goop. And out of black goop, nothing flies through the air and lands in it. It contains the life molecules. And they are actually forming that primordial soup, that fundamental primordial soup. And I'm not saying that if you wait long enough, a human being is going to climb out of it. That strict evolutionary type thing, because that's foolishness. I mean, there is evolution, but it is nothing like the Darwin theory. I mean, nothing at all. I mean, if you just go to, I don't know if those so-called horses are still in Washington, D.C., but if they are, what a joke on science. Because they have these little tiny horses that were prehistoric, and they go horse 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to a modern day horse. It's so completely asinine. I mean, they shouldn't even be in the same phylum, practically speaking. In other words, it is not true. It is not an evolutionary, equestrian example of evolution. It's wrong. It's incorrect. Just like ever since the large dinosaurs have been in the major museums, they've had the wrong head on it. The Brontosaurus, I think it was. And they finally just recently, in fact, I said that in 1978 as an example. And it was since that time that they've discovered that it was the incorrect head. I mean, major, major problems. I went way off on a tangent. I've kind of lost myself.
I had something pop into my mind.
Go ahead.
What about when the Virgin Mary or Kuan Yin or any of the great masters appear in different places and give, spiritual help? Or even, isn't there supposed to be a hierarchy of 7 spirits that help the earth to reach its highest evolvement? Now, how does if they have souls, is that different from the souls that are being channeled that are caught on the human level? When they
a good example, because this is around 1990, good example would be a very saintly individual, a personality with a soul that was incarnated through genealogical means, well knows it happened, and that the soul incarnated with this particular human form. In other words, I shouldn't be judgmental about, because this was past in time, so I have to be careful what I say or what I claim. In fact, this particular one I'm thinking of is a Catholic canonized saint, which doesn't necessarily qualify him as a true saint, but trust me that he was, and I have to say he because in that incarnation it was a he, and he's referred to now as Saint Charbel. All right, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his hometown, so to speak, of Baalbek, Lebanon. All right, but that's kind of important to me right now because I have a few additional measurements for it. That which he was, and therefore that which he still is. Now, what am I saying? If he's a saint, wow, he's cool, and he did all of his stuff, to say the least, because isn't he a saint? And you're all, well, yeah, and he must have zipped right through the tunnel. In fact, he didn't even stop to have a life review. Wrong. In fact, the opposite is true. Now, this is divine in nature, and this is a very loving, unconditional love type gesture on the part of that soul. We'll still call him
a saint before he died.
Yes.
And he came back again.
He hasn't left.
Gotcha.
So therefore, the healings that have gone on, and there have been like 300 documented healings just at the local shrine in Lebanon. And granted, this is Christian, Catholic in nature, Mennonite, or close enough. Mennonite Catholics? No, I'm not saying it right.
No.
Oh, something like that.
Yeah.
Now I'm stuck with the word. Something like that. Anyway, a certain, like for instance, they have Jesuits and various others. Oh well, can't think of it. So it's in that the kind of category, and there's the typical Catholic statuary type shrine. There's a bell tower, which isn't even a tower at all. It's only about 15, 20 feet tall. Various other things that I hope someday I'll get to see.
Oh, good.
Whoops.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Other than that,